Howdy gamer, let's talk about the runes for Poppy support. Poppy support's a pretty niche pick. You want to pick it whenever the enemy picks things like Zac, Yasuo. He can be a good answer to any of the dash champions, Lucian. Basically, like your job is to interrupt a dash and then catch an enemy out with your E. But then also, Poppy's ultimate is pretty impactful in a team fight so long that you land it onto key targets, whether it be punting their front line out of a fight or their back line. It's usually one or the other. So Poppy does function as support, but it's not so traditional, and it's also usually has to be used as a counter pick. So anyways, starting with the keystone, it's obviously going to be Aftershock. Aftershock giving you more resistances whenever you CC a target, so anytime you land your E, your ult, or even your W, then you're going to be able to proc Aftershock, and then Aftershock gives you more armor and magic resist, so anytime you're engaging, it's going to make you more durable initially, but then also with Poppy, whenever Poppy gets low on health, she also gets bonus resistances. So even if an enemy is engaged on you and you get low, if you proc Aftershock, then your resistances are going to be even more and more and more. So it's a good engage tool, and then it has synergy offensively and defensively. Because even if you proc it when you go in and then you get low, you're going to get the bonus resistances from Poppy's passive anyways. So you're going to be pretty durable at all stages. And then now with the changes to Aftershock coming into Season 10, it has a lower cooldown, but then it has lower resistances early, but then you have a higher percentage of resistances, which is good for most supports as all the items you want to be purchasing are usually stat items, Zeke's Herald, Locket, Knight's Vow, etc. So you have better scaling with it, and then it's also on a lower cooldown. So in a laning phase, whenever you take a trade, you only have to wait 20 seconds in between each trade for it to be a pretty safe trade. So probably every single time you're going in with Poppy, you're going to have the bonus resistances. And then if you're landing the E, then you're definitely getting the damage off. Pretty good rune. The best choice by far for Poppy. Things like Grasp or Guardian, not even close to worth on support. For the secondary runes, I think the best option is Shield Bash. With Poppy's passive, you're going to be able to get a shield, and then that's primarily going to be your trading tool in lane, as it's basically like a ranged auto attack. So whenever it's up, you can just throw it at the enemy, and then you get a Shield Bash proc on top of that once you pick it up. So that's interesting. It also makes you slightly more durable with the armor and magic resist, but that's pretty negligible. But the extra damage it adds can be pretty meaningful, as it, like Poppy's basically just about bursting someone, and having more burst is nice. Something like Font of Life, even though Poppy does have a lot of slows and whatnot in her kit, if you don't have the right champion to combo it with, then it's not so useful. And the champions that you're probably playing with Poppy are going to be champions that like to burst. The mages like Syndra, champions like Lucian, Draven, Kaisa, etc. Those are usually going to be your lane duos. If you're playing with hyper carries like Varus, Kog'Maw, Jinx, etc., sure, you can run Font of Life. It's a fine rune, but it's kind of hard to proc in a defensive situation, and then Poppy's mostly for like her offensive utility. Something like Demolish lost a lot of value as turret plates are worth less, but it's an okay rune as well, as Poppy has her one ranged auto to proc on towers, so it's okay. If you have a pushing lane, then maybe consider running Demolish, but defaultly I'm going to recommend Shield Bash. And the third row, all of these are good. The way you should discern which one you want to run is in melee matchups, melee support matchups such as Leona, Nautilus, etc. Bone plating is pretty good, as Bone plating is on a pretty long cooldown, but it blocks a high amount of flat damage. So if an enemy support engages on you, you're going to be blocking a good amount of damage that they initially deal. And then you have the option to retaliate with your own CC ability, whether it be W or E, to proc Aftershock. So then you get durability after that. So it helps you a lot in lane trades against melee supports. If you're playing into Enchanters or into mage supports, second wind's the best, as you're going to be getting way more HP regen for any time they damage you at all. And there's lots of ways for mage and enchanter supports to damage, even if it's like the smallest amount. The damage is going to be proccing second wind, and then you're just inevitably going to end up with more HP in the laning phase, and then that's going to give you way more utility, as it's way more likely that an engage is successful if you engage at a higher HP value. Because if you get poked down too much, then if you engage, then you're probably just dying yourself. And then conditioning isn't bad. It's pretty underutilized in my opinion. Conditioning, after 10 minutes, you gain 9 armor and 9 magic resist, and then you also gain plus 5% bonus armor and magic resist. Or not even bonus armor and magic resist, just magic resist. So this will scale with Aftershock, this will scale with Poppy's passive, and then it will scale with all the items that you build. And then the best matchups to run this in are matchups that either you negate champions like Pike, Alistar, where the laning phase is kind of passive, and then in matchups that negate you entirely, so matchups like Morgana, where they pick a counter champion that's basically saying like you can't really do what Poppy does best in the laning phase. But then if you respond with running conditioning, then you basically put them on a timer and you say like, that's fine. It's fine that I'm not doing anything in the laning phase. I'll meet you mid game with just simply more stats. And then come late game, those stats are also going to be amplified. So it's a very, very solid rune. Defaultly, I'm going to recommend second wind, but really think about conditioning. And then for the last row, I'm going to recommend Overgrowth. Overgrowth basically just gives you a ruby crystal come mid game. Whenever you're near minions or monsters, so basically just minions that die, you gain a maximum amount of health. And then once you've absorbed 120 minions or monsters, basically just minions, then you're going to get a percentage of increased health. And that basically gives you a ruby crystal come mid game. And that is so strong on support. Like 150 HP for free is so wild. On top of the support items themselves that are pretty strong this season, like they scale better but they're weaker early. That's such a nice trade-off, man. Revitalize, you only have your one shield and you don't have any heals on Poppy, so that's pretty low value. And Unflinching, after casting a summoner spell, you gain tenacity and slow resist. Unflinching is for like staying on top of a target, and that's not so important for Poppy. You land your E and then you like dump a full rotation. If they don't die off that, then they don't die. Staying on top of them doesn't really matter as you're not going to get your cooldowns up again. So having the extra health also probably outweighs this in just basically every matchup. Secondary runes I'm going to recommend are, it's going to be in the inspiration tree with Hextech Flash. Hextech Flash is pretty standard for most engaged supports, as once you flash once in the laning phase, you usually get a kill, and then whenever your flash is on cooldown, you're going to have access to Hextech Flash. And what Hextech Flash allows you to do is like usually just sit in a bush, channel the Hextech Flash, which gets you about three Teemos of distance, and then you can catch enemies out that are just not expecting it. And that can set you up for a lot of kills or just a lot of surprise trades against the enemy. So generally useful, and in solo queue it's so strong. Like most AD carry players won't be playing around your Hextech Flash, and you'll be able to punish them because of it. So it's pretty good. With Poppy, you don't actually need Biscuit Delivery. Most tank supports do, but with Poppy I think Cosmic Insight's better. Her cooldowns are fairly low, and especially with her Q, you could spam it multiple times in a fight, and then having your flash up more often is pretty important. So with Cosmic Insight, you're going to get 5% CDR, 5% max CDR, which means that you can go over the cap. So instead of 40%, you can get to 45%, and then 5% summoner spell CDR, and then 5% item CDR, which you don't really make use of the item CDR. But 5% on the summoner spells and then cooldowns is pretty good. Having your flash up more often and then being able to get multiple Q and E's off during team fights just generally makes you more useful. And since Poppy isn't like a spam heavy support, having the extra mana isn't that necessary. And you can also itemize mana pretty easily since you can build into Zeke's Herald on Poppy as support. So one of the supports that really doesn't need it, and since they don't, just make use of the CDR. And then for stats, it's going to be Adaptive Force, Armor, and Magic Resist. With any tank support, you probably want Armor and Magic Resist early, as you're going to be negating most values of damage that you can be taking early. And having this from level 1 makes it so that any lane that you're playing into is just going to be dealing less damage to you. Tank supports deal magic damage, and Enchanters and Mage supports deal magic damage. And even some AD carries will. So having the Armor and the Magic Resist helps you negate both types of damage, and then therefore just be healthier and more durable throughout the laning phase or in an all-in. And then with Adaptive Force, Poppy does have a good amount of AD scaling, and then you can also build the AD support item, the one that basically functions like Relic Shield. So having that little bit of AD is nice. Poppy doesn't benefit from the attack speed like other supports does. Like let's say Nautilus, like the extra attack speed just doesn't really add up as much versus having just more damage on the abilities, as all of her abilities have AD scaling. So This is the runes I recommend for Poppy support. Again, kind of a niche pick, but definitely pretty viable, and is a like if you have Poppy like practiced and you can actually like use the W properly and then actually catch out enemies with her E, it's pretty strong. And then you're also not a traditional support, so if you start snowballing, it's even stronger. But if you get behind, it's even weaker, like most non-traditional supports are. So that's the runes I recommend with Poppy. Not much variation with the other secondary trees, and I don't even think the secondary trees are like even worth going into. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I answer every single question in the comments, and if this video helped you, leaving a like helps me. And if you're interested in support gameplay, check out my Twitch, twitch.tv/SawyerNelson. Probably playing Senna, not Poppy. Poppy's okay, but I can't pick it every day. She's alright. Maybe I'll land an E, you know? Maybe I'll stun someone, you know?